Whether they're floating off the ground, teleporting on stage, or regurgitating frogs, a magician never reveals their secrets. But today, I'm going to expose the truth behind the world's most legendary illusions, and each one is crazier than the last, starting with the Coin Matrix. This trick is a staple of close-up magic, and it involves using playing cards to cover up 4 coins, which then all teleport under one of the cards one by one. All it takes is dexterity and misdirection, as the illusionist uses sleight of hand to pick the coins up with the cards and move them while distracting the audience. But in 2017, a magician called Will Tsai performed a variation of the trick on America's Got Talent that was even more impressive. Mel B's jaw dropped, Heidi looked like she'd been kicked in the face, and we actually saw Simon Cowell crack a smile. So the trick was clearly pretty spectacular. It started as expected with cards and coins on a table, but then Will stopped concealing the magic and the coins teleported out in the open before transforming into rose petals. Now, before we burn Will for witchcraft, you should know that the trick wasn't accomplished with magic or sleight of hand, and it was actually made possible with engineering. That table is the real star here. The area under each card contains a mechanism to either reveal or hide the coins, and his foot operated a hidden pedal that activated the switches. There were also 4 separate mechanisms that he operated to reveal the rose petals in the middle of the table at the end of the act. The engineering is brilliant, and the trick itself does indeed look very clean, maybe a little too clean. Like, why can't we see the mechanism at work when slowing down and inspecting the video? Well, the YouTuber Captain Disillusion revealed that since some of the coins remained stationary when they should have moved with the rest of the video, the entire clip was clearly edited. While Will did perform the illusion live, after the performance, the show's producers saw some imperfections that the live audience missed. So they went in and digitally cleaned it up to hide the mechanisms and make it look even more impressive on TV. That's disappointing, but unsurprising. After all, broadcasting a seemingly impossible magic trick will only make the show more popular and earn them more money. In 2016, Matt Franco also wowed the AGT judges by performing an illusion with a Christmassy twist. He presents a gift wrap box and explains that he'll reveal what's inside at the end of the act. Then he displays a large book where each page can be mixed and matched to fit a snowman with different costume pieces. Matt flips through the book and gets the judges to choose a separate head, torso, and bottom to make a snowman that's seemingly completely random. However, he then opens the box, revealing a snowman that's dressed in the exact configuration that the judges specified. Holy hell, how did he do that? Well, Franco's book is modeled on a Svengali trick deck, where some of the cards are cut slightly shorter. When you rifle downwards through the cards, only the longer ones show, and when you rifle upwards, only the short cards are visible. In the Snowman book, all the shorter pages are identical, so as Franco rifles upwards through the book, the judges are forced to select the shorter pages in this specific configuration, even though it appears to be random. Franco went on to win that season of AGT, and his act is no joke. We'll look at some more incredible twists on old card tricks later on, but first, let's move on to some magic that's a bit more physical. The husband and wife duo of Jonathan and Charlotte Pendragon aren't just magicians, they're world record holders. After their trick Metamorphosis officially became the world's fastest transformation illusion. Jonathan starts by stepping into a bag which is tied at the top and placed inside a locked box. Then Charlotte climbs onto the box and lifts up the cloth. In a blink of an eye, the cloth drops to reveal Jonathan standing in her place. But it's not over, as he then opens the box to find his wife now tied in the bag.
How did he do that? How did he do that?
Well, the masked magician did his best to debunk the trick on his TV show, but this time he actually missed the mark. His entire setup is different. The Pendragons don't use extra assistants, they stand on top of the box rather than behind it, and they take a fraction of the time to complete the trick. However, he did reveal one piece of the puzzle. The bag contains a zipper which allows for escape even though the top is tied. Then, after Jonathan releases himself from the gimmicked bag, he escapes the box through a false back and remains remains hidden there. When Charlotte lifts the cloth, he quickly climbs behind her and she jumps down. It seems too fast for a human to accomplish, but both of the magicians are trained gymnasts. In addition, Charlotte's a dancer and former bodybuilder, and Jonathan has experience as a springboard diver and a martial arts expert. So the Pendragon's bodies are finely oiled machines, and they both possess the skills and raw physicality to pull off this unbelievably quick switch. Metamorphosis is undoubtedly one of the most impressive vanishing acts of all time, but in contrast, this next magician wanted to make himself as visible as possible. In 2013, Pepsi hired the British magician Dynamo to perform a public stunt in London as an advertisement for the company. He levitates up to a bus, holds the top, and remains floating in that impossible position as he rides around the city right in front of a Pepsi ad. We all know that Red Bull is the only drink that gives you wings, so how did Dynamo do it? First things first. The bus driver and passengers are all in on it. At the end of the video, when he levitates down, the bus is completely empty with no spectators. That's because the bus route he's taking is completely bogus, and there is no 543 bus that runs in London. Secondly, we never actually see Dynamo move the arm attached to the bus. The German magician Johann Lorbeer went on record saying he does a very similar trick where the arm is fake and it's actually a metal pole disguised by a latex arm. This pole is secured to the bus and holds a harness that he wears under his clothes. His real arm is just tucked by his side. And the levitation part? Well, with the suspicious way it was edited, that could have been achieved in a number of ways, from editing tricks to a lifting system hidden from view. Either way, the trick was a spectacle for the pedestrians, and in a moment we'll look at another levitating magician that transfixed their audience. But first, let's check out an impressive illusion that will make you want to look away. In 2017, David Blaine performed an incredible and revolting magic trick on The Tonight Show. But first, he told a rather strange story.
100 years ago, there's a guy that converted his stomach into an aquarium where he could store live creatures. And then he could bring them up at will.
Sure, Jan.
When story time was over, David promptly downed some water and regurgitated a live frog.
Oh my god, ew, David!
The little amphibian hopped around the glass before David swallowed it again and finished his act. He's done this before, summoning multiple frogs in a row to prove the creatures weren't just hidden in his mouth the whole time. So, how did he do it? Well, the secret is, there's really no secret. He really does swallow the frogs. But he's learned the art of regurgitation, using your muscles to bring swallowed objects up from your stomach or esophagus at will. In magic, this skill has been used since at least the 1600s with performances of water spouting. This involves drinking as much water as possible before spouting it out in a controlled stream like a human hosepipe. In the early 1900s, the performance artist Haji Ali pushed this trick further by drinking water and the highly flammable liquid kerosene. The low density of the kerosene allowed it to sit on top of the water in his stomach, so Haji could regurgitate the kerosene first and light it on fire before immediately putting the flames out with a spurt of water. David learned this trick too, and in 2013 he became the first person since Haji Ali to perform it during an appearance on Jimmy Kimmel. The same method is applied to regurgitating animals, and in David's story he referred to the magician Mac Norton, who was known as the Human Aquarium in the early 1900s due to his regurgitation act involving frogs and goldfish. Unsurprisingly, it's a lot harder to swallow animals than liquid, and David has explained that the trick involves swallowing around a gallon of warm water in preparation. This fills the magician's stomach and protects the frogs from his stomach acid, giving them a safe place to hang out for a few hours.
Nice.
When it's time to swallow the frogs, our gag reflex naturally pushes them back towards the mouth as they move, so Blaine had to learn to control his gag reflex through lots of practice. This training often involves swallowing a potato attached to a string, which lets the magician pull on the tater and learn how to control the stomach muscles necessary to push objects up to the mouth. David claims to have swallowed up to 10 frogs at a time, and although the trick seems simple, the preparation that goes into it is pretty impressive. Still, I can't help but feel bad for the poor little frogs. Fortunately, in lots of Blaine's other tricks, he's the only one in danger.
I'm in danger!
liar!
In one episode of his 2025 show Do Not Attempt, Blaine met up with a local magician in Brazil called Ligeirinho to learn a new trick. After just a few minutes of secret instruction, the Brazilian showed David how to open up his nostrils by pinching them at the top and make them wide enough to insert a sharp serrated knife. Again, there's no illusion here, and Blaine just had to carefully guide the knife into his nose to avoid puncturing anything important. He was so intrigued by the new trick that he went to get it x-rayed at the hospital, which revealed that the blade was a fraction away from rupturing his nervous system. That man is like a cat with 9 lives, and we'll see more of his death-defying tricks later on. But he's not the only David who's attracted to sharp and shiny blades. David Copperfield is the most commercially successful magician of all time, and one of his most visually stunning feats was the 1986 illusion Death Saw. In the routine, an escape trick seemingly fails, and a giant rotary blade cuts David in half. His assistants separate the severed halves of his body before he spends back time, repairs himself, and escapes. The secret to this trick, and many others like it, lies inside the design of the big boxes and tables that stage magicians use. The bottoms are deeper than they look, allowing for secret compartments. Add the liberal use of stretchable spandex, and you can easily hide an assistant in the leg compartment. So Copperfield is simply hiding half of his body, bent over in a slightly awkward position, with his real legs in front of him, whilst using an assistant to act as his legs. The shenanigans beforehand with the black box locked over David allowed him and his assistant to contort into this position before the blade cut him in half. It's pretty clever, but there's another way to perform the trick without the use of secret compartments. The magician Rob Lake updated the illusion in 2021 by slicing himself in half with a laser. Then, to change drop, he holds onto them and he's suddenly lifted into the air, leaving his legs behind. The pair of detached legs even show off by walking independently on stage before Lake is lowered down and his torso and legs reconnect. But with no secret compartments, how did Lake achieve the illusion, and how did his legs move independently from his body?
Magic.
Well, actually, this illusion is nothing more than a trick of the light, or rather a trick of the dark. You see, Rob isn't actually standing upright when his torso lifts, and he's really lying horizontally on a platform with his legs covered in Musuo black fabric. This is the darkest fabric in the world, and it absorbs 99.4% of light, rendering his legs invisible against the stage's black backdrop. But if they're his real legs, whose are those? Well, they're actually robotic legs that are designed to walk and balance independently. Clever camera angles and front-hitting lights obscure the true angle of Lake's lower body, but there's some editing trickery going on here too. When Lake is lowered back down, he replaces the robotic legs with his own in one fluid motion, but the pants worn by Lake and the robot are slightly different. So the live audience would clearly notice the switch, and this whip transition only works for people watching a recorded version of the trick. This proves that this cut in the edit obscures the moment that Lake replaced the fake legs with his own. So what gives? Are the audience just faking their reactions? Well, critics have noted that we never actually see Rob and the audience in the same shot, so they believe that he just used reactions from another performance and edited them onto this one.
You're a liar! You're a liar!
Now, I know you're upset about all this trickery, but don't worry. Other magicians are able to create similarly impossible illusions right in front of the audience. Take this magical bartender trick from Dom Chambers. Back in 2019, he appeared on America's Got Talent and performed a series of tricks with Siri as his personal assistant. To end the act, he asked the judge Julianne Howe to select a drink from a list of cocktails. She chose a tequila sunrise, and Siri filled Dom's phone screen with orange liquid that he then poured into a glass. With a sip, Julianne confirmed that the cocktail was real, and viewers across America turned to their phones and begged Siri to pour them a beer. But unfortunately, it was all an illusion, and the trick was really performed with a special phone case. See, the phone case has a secret compartment which can hold a small amount of liquid. Chambers didn't know which drink Julianne would pick, but he didn't have to, because the box inside him is filled with every cocktail on the list that she chose from. After her For selection, a remote-controlled mechanism in the box filled the phone case with Tequila Sunrise. The drink filling up the phone screen is just a pre-recorded video, which is clear when you notice that the time never changes throughout his entire act. Man, and here I was hoping that the latest iOS update would turn my phone into a personal bartender. Fortunately, our dream of unlimited free drinks is still alive, thanks to our old friend Matt Franco and his magic milk carton. In 2017, he returned to America's Got Talent for a guest performance where he poured milk, orange juice, red wine, water, beer, and lemonade from one single milk carton. To confirm the drinks are legit, he even got the judges to try them. Similar tricks are often performed by using a container with hidden compartments for each individual drink, but Franco shows that he didn't use this method by ripping the carton open at the end of the act. So how did he pull it off? Well, the carton was simply filled with water. Out of the 6 glasses, 5 of them had recesses at the bottom that were hidden by the table's lip and Matt's hand as he poured. These recesses contained powder that reacted with the water from the carton to create colored liquids. Note that the only time he lets us see the bottom of the glass and the actual liquid being poured is when he fills it with water. A subtle trick which convinces the audience that he has nothing to hide throughout the performance. Of course, each colored powder doesn't actually produce the drinks they look like, so how did the judges end up tasting the real thing? Well, it's believed that whilst Franco pours the last drink and distracts the audience, the tray is covertly switched by his assistant off screen, likely behind the drinks table on stage. The secret behind the trick is actually revealed when Franco pours the final drink, as you can clearly see the liquid coming from the carton is water, not cloudy lemonade. Furthermore, the beer that Matt pours doesn't have any foam, but after the swap, the drink is frothy and much lighter in color. The amount of milk in the glass also magically increases by the end of the act. So when you watch the trick frame by frame, the illusion seems simple and obvious. But that's why lots of stage magic relies on distraction, so the audience can't analyze everything that's happening in front of them. In contrast, close-up magicians are able to perform impossible tricks right in front of your eyes. In 2014, an illusionist called Smoothini appeared on America's Got Talent and wowed the judges by making salt disappear
Where is it?
and reappear from his hands with a single motion. You'd think the salt would spill everywhere, and it would if I attempted the trick, but what the judges and audience don't realize is that Smoothini has a fake thumb to help him. He starts by wearing the fake thumb on his right hand before quickly moving it onto his left palm and hiding it with a tight fist. Inside, the thumb tip is upside down, allowing it to collect the salt as he pours it into his hand. Then, when he pretends to push the salt further into his left hand, he's really putting the salt-filled prop back onto his right thumb. And voila! The salt has disappeared. To make the salt reappear, he simply takes the thumb tip off again in a fist before pouring it back out. While it looks impressive, the trick couldn't be simpler, and it's very easy to learn at home to impress all of your friends or salt your fries with the flair of a magician. If you stick with me, I'm going to show you more insane party tricks that you can learn yourself. But first, we're going to explore a death-defying stunt that you should never try at home. And unsurprisingly, it was performed by David Blaine.
Ah, here we go again.
On an episode of Do Not Attempt, Davey went to Indonesia and met Fitz, a magician who's known for performing tricks with snakes. In the movie, snake charmers typically put their reptiles into a trance with music. But Fitz reveals that the trick to snake charming doesn't lie with sound, but rather in the movements of the instrument in the snake charmer's body. The snakes mirror the charmer swaying, which slowly hypnotizes them, allowing the charmer to get up close to them without being bitten. But Fitz takes it one step further as he taught Blaine his signature move, kissing a deadly king cobra on its head. First, Blaine must approach very slowly, as any sudden movement will cause the serpent to lash out. Then he assumes a non-threatening position with his hands behind his back and his legs in a wide stance, imitating a kind of dance. As the snake starts to copy his movements, Fitz holds onto the cobra's body to keep it still, allowing Blaine to lean in and successfully kiss the deadly serpent's head. Funnily enough, the usually fearless Blaine was actually pretty worried about the trick. He took the precaution of traveling from Indonesia to Thailand to perform it, as the country is the world's only manufacturer of king cobra anti-venom. Of course, magicians have been using animals in their acts for centuries, and in 2014, an illusionist called Darcy Oak put his own twist on the old rabbit out of the hat trick. His audition for Britain's Got Talent involved repeatedly making doves appear in a puff of smoke before conjuring up 2 bird cages seemingly out of thin air.
Oh my God! Wow!
Then, for his grand finale, he approached a larger cage where he was storing the doves, covered it with a blanket, and whipped it away to reveal a woman who'd magically appeared in the bird's place. So, how did he do it? Well, as you might have guessed, Oak kept the birds inside the sleeves of his jacket, allowing him to shake his arms with a flourish and reveal each dove one by one. He lights the matches as a simple distraction that draws the audience's eye while he flicks the bird out of his sleeve. The same trick is used for the bird cages, which naturally pop into his hands because they're collapsible. As for the larger cage, it has a false back with a hidden compartment, and the darkness of the blanket conceals its true depth. There's even a moment during the final transformation when you can spot its real size, and there's clearly enough room for a contortionist to fit in the space. When the woman appears, he folds the collapsible cage up with the bird still inside, finishing the illusion with a flourish. So despite appearing impossible, the trick is actually pretty simple. But it does mean that when Darcy first walked on stage, he had 6 birds up his sleeves, and his assistant was squashed inside the hidden space for the entire act. Man, does anyone else think that the assistants are often more impressive than the magicians? If Darcy's doves don't wow you, then how about a trick with a larger animal, like an elephant? Harry Houdini is probably the most famous magician of all time, and his most mystifying trick came in 1918 with the vanishing elephant illusion. Harry would start by leading an 8-foot, 5-ton elephant called Jenny into the rear of a large cabinet. He specifically told the audience that the cabinet was 8 square feet before the rear doors were closed and a curtain was drawn over the front. Then a team of 12 men turned the heavy cabinet so the doors faced the audience. This took 8 minutes, but when the doors and curtains were opened again, the elephant was nowhere to be seen.
Where is it?
Now I know what you're thinking, but no, Houdini didn't put Jenny up his sleeve. And while he never revealed the secret behind the trick, other magicians think they figured out how he did it. See, the trick was performed at the New York Hippodrome, a venue with a gigantic stage that made the cabinet seem smaller than it actually was from the audience's perspective. It was much bigger than 8 square feet, and it contained a secret compartment on one side that was hidden with a mirror that reflected the cabinet's interior. As the cabinet was turned, the elephant was ferried into his compartment by a trainer and concealed with the mirror. So when Houdini revealed the interior, it looked like the elephant had completely disappeared. But it was actually standing just inches away from its starting position. Nowadays, this solution might seem pretty lame, but remember, tricks like this were completely new at the time, and without YouTube to explain how the illusion was performed, the audience thought Houdini was a genuine wizard. Interestingly, the trick was actually taught to Houdini by the British illusionist Charles Morett, who used to perform a variation of it that he called tally-ho. First, he'd open the cabinet and show that it was empty before closing the door and opening it again to reveal that an entire fox hunting party had appeared. This included 2 gun-toting hunters, a dog, and a lady riding a horse, who'd all burst out of the cabinet and run around the stage to the audience's amazement. Attending Charles's show sounds like a fox's worst nightmare, but the trick was a hit, and it supposedly used the exact same method as Houdini's elephant illusion. I don't know, man. If the movies have taught me anything, then I know that Charles's cabinet was really just a portal to Narnia. Conjuring up horses and elephants is pretty magical, but let's move on to something much darker that blurs the line between sorcery and surgery. This popular trick has been performed by a ton of magicians over the years, and it involves cutting off the tip of their assistant's tongue without causing any pain or drawing blood. Firstly, the magician may bring up some audience members to verify that the assistant's tongue is real, giving credibility to the trick. Then the assistant is placed under a hypnosis that mirrors death by using a technique that seemingly stops their pulse. Once the audience members on stage confirm the pulse has stopped, the magician takes a pair of scissors and cuts off the tip of the assistant's tongue before revealing it to the audience, who by this point are presumably screaming and throwing up. Now, before you freak out too, the assistant obviously isn't harmed in this trick. The illusion ends with the magician waking them up and magically restoring their tongue, allowing them to stick it out to wow the audience. As you've probably guessed, the tongue being cut isn't the assistant's. And in the 1970s, the magician Sam DeLaw revealed that this trick is typically performed with an animal's tongue. Ew. The assistant hides it in their pharynx, which is the space between the nose and mouth. This allows them to show their real tongue for inspection before regurgitating the animal tongue into their mouth to be cut. When the assistant is hypnotized, they're actually in full control, and they temporarily make their heartbeat incredibly slow by holding their breath while aggressively expanding their chest cavity. After the tip of the fake tongue has been cut, the assistant waits until the magician shows it to the audience before discreetly swallowing the rest of the tongue while they're distracted. Then all they have to do is pretend to wake up from a deep hypnosis and stick out their real tongue to complete the trick. Man, even though the assistant doesn't get their tongue cut off, faking your death and swallowing an animal's tongue still isn't a pleasant day of work.
This is stupid. I quit.
As we know, David Blaine is the master of unsettling magic, and one of his most common crowd pleasers is eating glass.
Mom, come pick me up.
He'll bite into a regular drinking glass, chew it up like a potato chip, and swallow it down before finally sticking out his tongue to prove it's all gone. So how does he achieve the trick without cutting himself? A fake glass? A hidden cheat compartment? Nope, there's no great illusion here, and he really does eat the glass. With a very specific technique. See, as he chews, he makes sure the shards don't come into contact with his tongue or gums, carefully crushing them down with his teeth. He does this until the glass is ground down into a fine powder that's actually perfectly safe to swallow. He also usually performs the stunt with wine glasses, as the thinner glass is faster and easier to break down, making the process even safer. Other magicians have theorized that Blaine also eats butter before performing the trick to lubricate his throat and make the powder easier to swallow. Similarly, it's been noted that eating soft bread or bananas beforehand could help collect the glass within the stomach, preventing it from touching his insides and further reducing the risk of internal injury. But it isn't clear if David actually uses these methods, and even with them, it's still a very hazardous trick. So for the love of God, please don't try this at home, especially if you already have a bunch of frogs in your stomach. Like most people, I love card games, but I definitely wouldn't want to play poker with Takumi Takahashi. The magician appeared on Asia's Got Talent in 2019 and demonstrated his sleight of hand by placing several cards on a table and making them disappear right before the judge's eyes. Then, a moment later, the same cards reappeared out of nowhere with a single wave of Takumi's hand. He's every casino owner's worst nightmare. But the secret behind this trick means that Takumi couldn't perform it on any old poker table. If you slow the video down, you can see that to hide the cards from view, he first places them deep in his palm so no one can see them. Then he quickly slips them into a hidden pocket attached to the back of his custom table. Sneaky, huh? This allows him to remove the cards from the table without dropping them on the floor, and it also allows him to bring them back while making it seem like he's conjured them out of thin air. Man, I can barely shuffle a deck of cards, so this level of sleight of hand is seriously impressive. But the next time we play Go Fish, we're using my table, Takumi. Sleight of hand is impressive, but sleight of mind? That's next level. And if you want to learn how to read minds, then you could master this next trick yourself at home. Back in the 1880s, lots of magicians performed acts where they blindfolded their assistant and retrieved a random object from the audience. Then they'd use coded language to discreetly communicate what it was to the assistant so they could guess correctly and demonstrate their psychic powers. For example, saying "watch this illusion" to the audience at some point during the act could signal to the assistant that the chosen object was a wristwatch. This is obviously pretty lame, and before long, audiences started to catch on to the trick. So our old friend Charles Mort devised his own groundbreaking mind-reading act with a new technique. Mort and his partner Lillian knew that the people watching their performance would all be listening out for a secret spoken code, so they created a code based on silence. They trained in the art of synchronized counting, which meant they would both count silently in their heads at exactly the same time. Before the performance, Charles and Lillian would have memorized a predetermined list where a huge number of objects corresponded to different numbers. For example, a coin might be number 1, a pocket knife might be number 2, and so on. During the act, Lillian would be blindfolded and Charles would possess a certain object from the audience. Then he'd use a cue, like a subtle click of his heel to tell Lillian to start counting. They would count together in their heads in synchronization until Charles would make another audible cue ending the count. So let's say Charles received a watch from the audience, and on his list a watch corresponded to the number 8. Charles would click a heel initiating the count, and after 8 seconds he'd click it again, letting Lillian know she should stop counting. From there she'd know that 8 on her list equaled a watch and stun the audience with her second sight. It was a risky method as the duo had to be totally in sync and memorize their long list of objects perfectly, but the actual technique is pretty simple and anybody could learn to perform it as long as you have a friend to help. Oh man, I'm so alone. Which one of these illusions was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to see me expose more magic tricks by performing them myself, check out my video on magic tricks that would impress anyone. Thanks for watching.